Good evening, Placerville. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:10. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, Ms. O'Connell.
Councilmember Borelli? Here. Councilmember Nell?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza will be noted as absent. Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will be moving on through this agenda pretty quickly. It's a short one tonight, and we're going to get started with the National Police Week Proclamation. This is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville proclaiming May 15th through May 21st, 2022, National Police Week, and May 15th, 2022, Peace Officers Memorial Day in the City of Placerville. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have adopted Public Law 8754, designating May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, in recognition of law enforcement officers nationwide who have sacrificed their lives or been disabled in the performance of their duties while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. And whereas Public Law 8754 also designates the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week in recognition of the service provided by thousands of federal, state, and local law enforcement officers. Whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of those who dedicate their lives to the law enforcement profession and to keeping our communities safe. And whereas police officers, Placerville police officers, and law enforcement throughout the state and nation risk their lives on a daily basis to maintain peace within the community and protect the lives and property of our citizens. And the member of the Placerville Police Department provide a vital public service, safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of this city. Now, therefore, I, Kara Taylor, Mayor of the City of Placerville, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through May 21st, 2022, as National Police Week in the City of Placerville, and be it further proclaimed that May 15th, 2022 shall be Peace Officers Memorial Day in the City of Placerville, and the United States flag shall be flown at half-staff at all city offices on this date. With that, Chief, would you like to say any words?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council, and of course our fabulous community. Yeah, this is a week where we really reflect on the fact that, over the years, hundreds of law enforcement officers left for a shift that they never returned home from. So I know it's kind of somber, but we recognize their sacrifice, and we appreciate the fact that there are still folks willing to raise their right hand and say, pick me, I'll go do this job. So thank you for the recognition, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Would any council members or staff like to say any words?
No, I just want to say the same thing, and I know we've been noting the importance of all this, and Sacramento yesterday did a couple days ago, saw I'm sure our guys were represented down there too. So, but I thank you again. We all thank you for all you do, and thank you for the beautiful pins you gave us.
Yeah, let there be no question, at least in this town, that we 100% support, believe in, and appreciate what you guys do every day, the risk that you put in every day. We're glad that our risk is kept low here in this town, and that it is a safe place to live, a great place to raise our family, raise our kids, to have a business, and we know that you guys got our back when we need it. So thank you very much.
Just want to echo our appreciation, and so thankful for the partnership that our force has with our community. Thank you.
The Placerville Police Department does just a really great job being community partners and just being a calm presence in the city. We don't ever hear any complaints about Placerville police officers from the public, and you have on several occasions shared some real compliments that your officers have gotten from the public, and that's always great to see. But As the Placerville Police, they just deserve our appreciation, and we have full confidence in their ability to keep the community safe and be a force of calm and just great partners to have. So thank you so much. I'm going to walk down and I'm going to give this to you.
I'm going to get a picture because Rebecca's not here.
Our photographer's not here.
Thanks, Dennis. Send that to me. You write the picture. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Oops.
I'd like to invite anyone from the public to speak on this item if they so choose. All right. Seeing none, I will move on to. Oh, sorry, Sue. Step on up.
You jump higher, faster.
Sue Rodman, member of this wonderful community, and I definitely appreciate our police force. When I see them out there, I know that they're on the job. And when I go by the high school and see the resource officer, the school resource officer there, I think, great, the kids know that they're protected and they have somebody to come to as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Sue. All right, we will move on to closed session report. City Attorney Ibrahimi.
Thank you. The council did meet in closed session on 2 items today. Councilmember Saragosa was absent, and Councilmember No recused herself from item number 2, which was conference with real property negotiator, because she had a financial interest in the arts and culture El Dorado item. There was no public comment, and the council gave direction to staff on both of those items.
Thank you. All right, item 5, adoption of the agenda.
I'll move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a first and second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. All right, item 6, announcements and presentations to the public. We're going to start with a presentation by our community utility liaison, Mark Acuna, on PG&E public safety power shutoff preparation and other utility-related projects.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor and distinguished council members. This is Mark Acuna, Placerville City Utility Liaison. We want to give you and all the staff present in our community an update on the issues that Mr. Morris and myself have been working on with PG&E over the last 4 or 5 months. There's a copy of my presentation on the dais. I believe then there's also some copies in the back of the room. I'll try to go through most of this quickly because some of it is, these are long haul projects, so there will be some successes. Quickly, the Psps outage program, the most troublesome for us over the years. I'm happy to report that PG&E is committed this year to continue to use the same Techno Silva, which is the more advanced and far more accurate fire weather forecasting modeling system. So that in itself should reduce the number of outages and hopefully prevent any outage where we wind up with a no wind event. Those are very frustrating for us early on in the Psps program. So good news there. They are, and I think everyone should have gotten something a couple of times in the mail early this year, what I call their fire safe switch settings. This is a program that PG&E has been rolling out more intensely over the last 2 years. What they're doing is they're going along to all the existing automatic switches that are out there in our neighborhoods and our business districts, and they are changing them to super sensitive settings during fire season for multiple months. This does lead to almost instantaneous shutdowns should a tree limb or power surge occur along a sectional line, and there is very clear evidence that this greatly reduces the risk of fire. However, these instantaneous shutdowns occur with no warning and do require a complete patrol of the affected line before it can be re-energized. This has led in the past and will lead to lengthy and disruptive outages. You may have heard last summer, North County Supervisor Parlin's district was hit with a bunch of these. And they would start with, of course, there's no warning, and they lasted anywhere from 8 to 12 to 14 hours, crossing through from daytime into nighttime. So I have concern with this particular program. There was some outages in town last year in the Bedford Street area. Every morning a motor was coming on, and every morning, at least once a week, that same motor was knocking that whole neighborhood out. They got that resolved, but that's the kind of mysterious electrical surges that can have a big impact to large areas. So this is something that Cleve and I will definitely be watching, and I believe we are trying to arrange for Brandon Sanders to come to the council in your second meeting in June to actually give the current PG&E presentation. They have a comprehensive slide program that shows exactly what they're doing, and I think in June he'd also be able to give us the most current update as to where they're at with that program. Moving on to Placerville Weather Station, we had a lot of enthusiasm with this, and the issue has been the responses have been very modest. We continue to push for as good a wind coverage as we can get for the Placerville area. With Cleve's concurrence, I continue to try to work with the county airport to, first of all, they don't have a backup generator at the airport. That also, by not having a backup generator, the National Weather Service station goes down whenever there's a power outage, whether it be a storm or a power safety shutoff. So we've been trying to identify, one, why does our airport not have a backup generator? You probably saw the story from the National Forest Service where and the helicopter is there on station. They will have a first response helicopter there now. It would be good for that crew to be able to count on having that facility have power. So I will continue to work on that and hopefully come back with a success on that. I'm sure there would be a lot of enthusiasm if we could get that one solved. Moving on, the California Public Utility Fire Tier ratings and South Main Street. We made an attempt last year, and I want to thank Chief Cordero for his assistance in that work to identify the situation where the rating really isn't deserved for an extreme fire zone on one side of Main Street and a high fire zone on the other side of Main Street when PG&E's lines are crisscrossing all through town. As you'll note on my report, there are hardened power lines literally within a couple hundred feet of Reservoir Alley. So I would be happy to see if we wanted to continue to explore this with PG&E. Their answer to us last year was it simply was unsafe to energize the Reservoir Street line while they did have lines energized on Pacific Street during all the outages. They had energized lines along Cedar Ravine. So there's that frustration. The other item, or the other recommendation from them, was to underground all of Reservoir Street. And this also goes to their, I believe it was their 10,000 miles of underground commitment that they've made. Cleve and I have requested a couple of times clarifications on that. Undergrounding existing utilities is very time-consuming and very expensive. Reservoir Street could easily be a $3 million project. That's just for the utilities. That's not for any city or private utilities. It appears the answer that we got from Brandon Sanders was to the best of his knowledge, the undergrounding that they're talking about still falls under the Rule 20 undergrounding program. That is a longstanding program, requires actions by the city council, will require actions by the property owners, and again, everybody would bear their own expense. So I don't see that as an effort to really streamline the process as it was presented to us last year. So I will keep pushing to see if they have some clarification. Everybody would love to have their line undergrounded as long as somebody else is paying for it. And it doesn't seem to be quite as clear-cut as it should be at this point. Our one frustration this year was the transmission switches, which was a big issue a couple of years ago with the genset and the downtown circuits that were energized during the outages. That project is still on the drawing board and has been moved out to late 2023. So we'll continue to track that one. Great news on the Placerville Substation building. Couple of fronts. We want to thank Brandon Sanders for his advocacy over 5 years now. He's just been extremely successful this last couple of months in getting some clarifications from PG&E Corporation. They have now clearly decided that they want to keep the building. It will serve as, I think, a very effective view block from Broadway to the substation equipment that sits in behind it on their Placerville sub. So they have also committed to get the building painted we're hoping to have it done by July. There was some hope to get it in coordination with the Broadway streetscape, but we'll keep moving forward on that. I believe there is discussion and agreement occurring as to the muted earth tone colors to get the building painted. So that'd be a huge improvement. So we're very happy to see that happening. And also want to thank Brandon for very quickly addressing a non-permitted use in there. A tree company had gone in, and one of many PG&E tree trimmers, and set up housekeeping without anybody's authorization. And it would have actually required the coming before the Planning Commission. So rather than going through all that, he simply scooted them out of there. So view-wise, it looks much nicer just being a clean, empty lot than having tree guys in there every day. So we thank him for that. The distribution hardening projects, we talked about this the last couple of years. A couple of real success stories there. Eschaton is in the process of being connected now. They've done all the trenching. Cable installation, I suspect, is ongoing. Good. The bottom line is that project will be completed, and that community will be connected to the microgrid well before any power Psps season events occur. Want to thank City Engineer Rebecca Naves for working with PG&E. There were a couple of issues there, as there always are. But we wait, just as you can see, we'll get the paving patched and they'll be done. So that's great news for them. Quickly, the circuit reconfiguration switches over on Ray Lawyer, Forney, and that area, which was a huge impact to that whole commercial area. I'm assured that they'll get that done in the next 3 months. So that's great news for all, as we've mentioned many times, a number of important businesses and government facilities will be safely in service. You'll also recall that last year we talked about the old copper conductors that's in our historic neighborhoods. Some of it is well over 100 years old. We were advised that the copper conductors are not prohibited, and that PG&E inspects them per their CPUC safety guidelines. And I will say, honestly, my first response upon seeing that was they haven't learned anything. Those are the same safety guidelines that led to the campfire in Paradise. Counting on something to have an infinite lifetime, I think, is pretty unrealistic. What I had hoped for was to sit down with them and get some acknowledgement that, yeah, this wire is anywhere from 80 to 100 years old, just went through a snowstorm, another snowstorm, and that there needs to be some replacement on this. We're not asking them to underground it. We're asking them to use safe overhead conductors. So Cleve and I will continue to push on that. And lastly, I've saved the best one for last, the double pole issue. This could be a very lengthy report, very, very complicated situation. For the public, the issue is the growing number of what we're calling double poles. The number of poles that PG&E has changed is unprecedented, and it has overloaded the entire system. They're trying to do two decades worth of pole work as quickly as they can get it done. As you'll see in my report, there are very clear agreements, and this whole process is administered by the Joint Pole Association. Money and agreements and time frames are all set forth in that agreement. It is something that the utilities generally don't like to discuss because it is an agreement between various communication companies, and there are actual dollar values for everything they do on a pole. And while that's all well and good, what we've got is a growing number of these double poles that, as I note here, create a whole variety of problems, from as simply being unpleasant to look at as to blocking views, to being in sidewalks, to being in travel lanes. And I would also suggest that these poles were deemed unsafe to be used anymore, but they're still all out there holding up phone cable, which can be one of the heaviest things that a wooden pole supports. So where is the safety time factor for the impact to the community and the property owners? It's my thought that without intervention, it will be years or decades before this work is completed. As I just mentioned, the impacts and the fact that these poles have already been rated as unsafe, I question where we could push on this. But as a community, I would suggest that had some discussions with the city engineer. PG&E is hypersensitive to this issue. Unfortunately, the answer that Cleve, myself, and Rebecca get is, well, call the phone company. As I note in my report, this is extremely low priority, almost despised work, difficult work, and nobody wants to go out and do it. So I would welcome any suggestions that you might have as to where we would want to go to try and push this forward. Growing impact across this community, across Northern California. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
It was just interesting, the phone line issue, because it seems like the phone companies are trying to move away from that. And everyone's going to cell phones. Will that become obsolete anytime soon? I wonder.
Comcast is also on those, and that's the major. Well, they share the same pole, and so it's a major supply of all the.
It's not just the phone; it's the phone and the cable.
Right. True. Yep. Yes.
So I'm going through it right now because they just put PG&E just installed a new pole, but there wasn't any, and their old pole was on my property, in my yard, on my patio. So they put a new one next to my patio. And I've had conversations with Brandon, and he's had conversations with the phone company, because I said, okay, I want some sort of guarantee that this old pole is going to go. Oh, yeah. So it's been several months, and the old pole is still there. And I will share, PG&E did tell me, the workers told me, that the reason all these poles are failing is because the phone company has loaded them up. So, I mean, this little battle's going on, right? But Dennis is right in that there's also a lot of cable stuff on there. And it's really hard to get, and I want it out of my yard. So I'm involved. But that's the story behind them. And every one of PG&E has replaced a whole line, and they have left the telephone poles in all of them.
Mark, do you know what the timeline?
Carrie, you know.
Do you know what the timeline is that's stipulated in the contracts that you mentioned regarding when they need to remove the obsolete poles?
It probably has anywhere from 90 to 120 days, and there's probably a reasonable release clause in there.
So the Comcast or cable companies or telephone companies need to, once PG&E has set up a new pole, they need to get in there and move their utilities. Is that PG&E's crew won't move their utilities?
It can be arranged that way.
Okay.
There is a pole on the corner of Upper Main and
Turner?
No, by the Sierra Tire and Wheel.
Oh, Locust.
Locust Street. Thank you, Cleve. Rebecca asked me to go take a look at it. Very congested, and that pole the new pole needs to go right back in the same hole. And so she's conditioned that encroachment permit to require that. To let them do anything else just won't work. You're going to impact somebody. Unfortunately, Councilmember No is correct. There is a tremendous amount of this phone company cable that is abandoned, or idle, I should say idle. And so there is absolutely no financial incentive for AT&T to get out there and do it. They no longer have line crews like they once did, so it's going to all have to be contracted out. And again, the utilities are all aware of what's going on. PG&E, in their fervor to, again, do all these poles, they have sucked up every line resource in the 11 western states. There is no contractor if I was an AT&T, an engineer or manager, there's nobody for me to call because they're all working for PG&E already. We can push back on that because a lot of these out-of-state line contract companies are qualified to do communication transfer work. There are labor agreements with PG&E folks that don't allow them to do communication work, but since they have a full house of contractors, perhaps that's another avenue we can explore. Is hey, you guys have Western States Power, have them move all those communication cables for us. It's a tremendous mess, Mayor Taylor, and because of the financial incentives and the workforce, it's just not there. So the city and the citizens and the property owners, we're all going to be living with this visual impacts and the safety impacts. And again, if you think about these poles being multiple years still in service, holding up, again, the heaviest copper cables that generally run down a residential street, or who's responsible for the safety when that fails? Comes down and hits a vehicle or does property damage. As I said, it's not an easy situation, but at the same time, I don't think that unless some intervention is taken, this is just going to keep compounding itself. One of the streets that I use that we're all familiar with is Turner Street, going up to the hospital. That was completely rebuilt 4 years ago to reinforce the feed to the hospital so that it would have service during the Psps outages. So those old poles are all still there. Comcast did transfer often onto the new poles approximately 2 years ago. So now it's been 4 years. So they go ahead and they send in a note to the phone company. Last one there has to pull the old pole, fill the hole in, pave the street. It's expensive. It's annoying. I would make a bet any day that those poles could easily sit there for 10 years, unless the city does something to bring it forward.
Can I comment on a couple of things real quick? I'll go to that one first because we did meet with Rebecca, and what we're doing right now is our inspector is providing us a list of all those encroachment permits they did where they put a new pole in and left the double pole there. We are then providing that to PG&E and ask them to show proof that they provided the notice to Comcast and AT&T and on what date they did that. We then plan to take that notification to AT&T and say, in accordance with the agreement, we need to get that agreement first and find out how much time they have to do that. You haven't complied with this agreement. And then our recourse, we believe at that point, if they still failed to remove the poles, will be to go to the Public Utilities Commission, who we believe enforces that agreement. Is that right, Mark?
That's correct.
Has the authority to do that. So that is the kind of the method we've set out right now to follow up on this, to try to get it and take care of. Want to mention a couple of things on the south side of Main Street. You mentioned the issue with Reservoir Alley. You did, in your budget meeting last night, you recall, reviewed the proposal for a CIP for Reservoir Alley. Small amount for the initial study and surveying, et cetera, to get that started. PG&E had told us, Brandon Sanders had told us, if the city does a utility project or a street project in that area, they would consider, I think, undergrounding those lines as part of that project. But no guarantee there. Who knows if that would really happen. Want to mention Rule 20, if you're not familiar with that. That's credits that we get over time to do undergrounding. The city used a number of credits back in late 2008-ish, approximately, when we did the Highway 50 project.
2006.
2006, thanks, Dave. And at that time, we went negative on our credits. And we currently have around 200,000 in negative credits still there. PG&E recently changed the Rule 20 program to where I believe the way they're doing it is cities that had a positive balance, they took those that hadn't used them and didn't have any proposed project, they were taking those credits back. I believe they're going to use those credits to do undergrounding, part of this that they're talking about. I spoke with a person the other day. I said, do you want to take our negative credits back? We'll be happy to give those to you. She laughed and she said, well, that's not completely off the table. They are discussing what they're going to do with those cities that have the negative balances. So there is potential that if they wanted to come into a city like Placerville that has the high fire risk and say, we're going to take some of these credits from other cities that are not using them and don't have a need for them and use those in a city like us to, take care of your negative balance and then do projects within the city. So I'm hoping that might be a possibility that would happen. The last thing I want to mention quickly is probably, we talked about Psps and the potential for power outages. You've probably all been hearing on the news lately, the state's been talking about that they anticipate blackouts this summer because of not enough power and people staying at home and working is apparently taking more energy than if people were at their office working. I'm not sure I understand exactly how that's working. But anyway, based on what they're seeing, they're anticipating blackouts this summer. In some ways, those can be even worse than the PSPSs, I think, because we don't necessarily get very good warning on those blackouts. From what I saw in the past, I don't know, Mark, maybe you disagree, but anyway, those and when those happen, the generator doesn't come on. They don't save those. Everybody goes out when those happen. So just a caution that that's something that we, based on what I'm hearing, we may have to deal with this summer and fall. So
my power at my house went out for 3 hours today.
I was just going to share with Mark that the power went out. So that generator has not been redone for Ray Lawyer and all that area?
When did your power go out, Councilmember Borelli?
I'm sorry?
When did your power go out? Today?
Today.
Totally unacceptable.
For 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Rayleigh's, Safeway, all of that was out.
Right in the middle of our workday.
Yeah, I heard that. I have not heard the reason why it was off. We need to find that out.
And it also went off yesterday, but just for like 5 minutes.
That's what I heard.
Hard on appliances and everything.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Those those automatic switches that I spoke about, those settings are out there. And because there is no fire weather right now, they're able to go out and just throw the switch back. So
it was long enough that all my businesses had to shut down.
Yeah. So that would be interesting if we could find out. I'll get with Brandon on that. Thank you for bringing that up. First, I'm sitting here thinking, it could have been storms because there was some lightning.
This is pretty mild weather.
But
I mean,
yeah, we wouldn't.
If you can't keep the power on right now. Couple of sprinkles that have passed through.
Cleveland brings up a very important point, and that is the rotating outages. And we went through 2 summers ago. It had been over 20 years since the, what's those guys called down there, down in Folsom? Anyway, There is a very clear-cut program, and it is interesting. It's very different than PSPS because you're dropping load and sharing the outage interruption across the system for no more than 2 hours. They generally like to do it for an hour. It's just done in massive blocks. This is the famous, if you were on the hospital circuit, you wouldn't be impacted. And that is true. That still should be in place. Any critical facility should not be subject to the rotating outages due to a shortage of generation in the state. ISO, I knew it would happen. Yeah. So, and I'll be back, I'm sure, before we get into that, but it's something to have in the back of our minds that is coming. The other thing I would also want to point out is a lot of this double pole thing is also causing PG&E to do a lot of setting of new poles in the scenic highway corridor. They're still doing it. They are reviewing it themselves and giving themselves exemptions. And the scenic highway corridor starts down at the Raylor Drive overpass and goes all the way to Echo Summit. Both sides of the highway within 500 or 1,000 feet, I believe. If anything is visible, you must put it underground or find or obtain exemptions from the appropriate agencies. And that would be the city of Placerville. That would, it's a process that the city has gone through at cost and, of time and expense, staff time and expense to prepare and obtain exemptions. So this is another ramification. Our city engineer has included it as part of her review, but of course they can't catch everything. And the latest one that she did share with me, and I saw that a PG&E person drove out and decided that they couldn't see the pole from Highway 50, so they gave themselves an exemption. The city took 18 months and a CPUC hearing to get the exemption for Mosquito Road project. So that still is an issue that needs to be addressed. If there's no other questions, I would leave you with another note just to kind of keep in mind, and this is really shocking for me, but I even was involved in this just in the last day. PG&E is offering a severance program, a one-time severance to management, construction, and engineering folks. 300 management positions have been marked for elimination, and the various engineering and construction positions, they haven't come up with a total of employees that they are going to allow to go out on severance. Now, I could not believe that. It was so much work and so many issues that somewhere their management team sees that as a good option right now to get rid of. These would be, of course, all the experienced folks. So just something to keep in your mind as we move forward. And I want to thank Cleve and Chief Cordero and Rebecca Neves for their help as we come across all these various problems. And public safety is always the number one concern with everything that we do out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you keeping us in the loop and advocating for us and following up on all the activities that PG&E is doing. So appreciate that. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to council member comments. Jackie, we'll start with you.
I attended Rise and Shine. That was a great event, as always. So much gets done, chaos during the day, but afterwards it's always nice to look at all our accomplishments. And attended the budgeting meeting yesterday.
All right, thank you. Dennis.
I too was at Rise and Shine, and it was a great event. A lot of things did get done. I got to work on a cemetery, Upper Town Cemetery, that very few people know how to get to, but kind of know where it might be. Yep.
Those stairs?
Yep. So, but got some tractors out, did some mowing and all sorts of fun stuff. So it looks good, and it'll stay good that way for the rest of the summer probably. Attended the El Dorado County Transportation Commission meeting, and I just got a couple of things. As you know, President Biden signed a $1.1 trillion infrastructure bill. I know that the city, the county, and Transportation Commission is working very hard along with our lobbyist, David Turch and Associates, to to find out all the different ways that we can gain access to those funds. Service STBG, or Service Transportation Grant, block grants, congestion mitigation, or CMAC, Transportation Alternative Programs, or ATP. All those have been increased by a substantial amount, and so we're looking to see, they're looking very hard to see where most of them are competitive, but they're looking to see where we might dovetail with those to get some funding for various things. One of the things we do have funding for is the US 50 Corridor Systems User Analysis Investment Strategy and Access Control Action Plan, otherwise known as Trip to Green around here. And El Dorado County Transportation was awarded $185,000 in a strategic partnership to work on that, what they call the 50 Fix or Trip to Green. So that's coming down the road. Greater Placerville, I think we've talked about this already, but Greater Placerville Wildfire Evacuation Preparedness Community Safety and Resiliency Plan received $250,000 in a Caltrans Planning Grant Fund to complete the Greater Placerville Wildfire Evacuation Community Safety and Resiliency Plan, or Wildfire Plan. So those are some of the things that we talked about at the meeting. Went into some detail on how those are going to work, but it was really good news to hear all that stuff coming our way from the Transportation Commission. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. Patty.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't participate in the city cleanup. I had to go out of town, so I missed that. But I want to congratulate everybody that was there, and I'm enjoying your work, or the results of all your work. So, and budget hearing last night. So that's about it, and that's it.
All right. Thank you. I also attended the Rise and Shine. Big thanks to Carrie Zeller and Amy Sellers, who does a lot of work organizing it, and all the volunteers and the faith community and service organizations that came out in force to do a bunch of projects around the city. It looks great, and really appreciate the hard work, and it was a fun day with the family to be out in the community.
I'll just say that Michael Saragosa did it too, but he's not here to kind of tout his efforts, so I'll do it for him.
Also attended the fair luncheon. Several of my colleagues
that's
were
right.
there.
Yeah, we did that.
Forgot about them.
The fair is going forward this year for their first time in several years due to the pandemic. They've had to overcome a lot of challenges, and it's exciting to have that back, and tickets are now available, I believe, online. I attended several meetings, the El Dorado Transportation Commission and El Dorado Transit. And then one thing I just wanted to mention briefly, I've gotten a lot of emails regarding some rumors flying around about events. And just for folks watching at home, the City Council has not canceled all events on Main Street. We've selected 7 of the best, most beneficial events for the community, and are continuing to allow full street closures for those. That includes the tree lighting, the Christmas parade, car shows, several others. Oktoberfest, and several others. And the Wagon Train Days is happening in June. The council did permit a street closure for that. However, the event co-sponsor chose a different location for it, which is fine too. But the city council is not canceling all events on Main Street. We are looking forward to having events that benefit the community. And that is all for my comments today. That brings us to item 7, the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise. I will open item 7 up to public comment. If anyone would like to comment on the consent calendar, please step up to the podium.
Just a couple of questions. Looking at the interchange program, if I understood it correctly, that's a big assumption, the ramp going eastbound looks like it's the one already built. Is that right? Or is there something new? The second question is, Of all these costs, and I saw lots of numbers from different places, how much of it comes out of city pockets directly versus, state taxes, which are our money too, but how much comes out of our pocket is the second question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Seeing no other takers on the consent calendar, I'm going to close public comment on that item. Mr. Morris, would you like to address that question?
Yeah, maybe Dave can help me with this, but there is a chart in the staff report that shows $750,000 came from traffic mitigation fees, so that would have been city funding. The remainder of that, there was highway infrastructure program funding, state highway operation and protection program funding, and SB1 funding, and urban surface transportation block grant program funding also. So the one that I think you would refer to as the $750,000 out of the $4.1 million for the project was, I guess you would consider local, because that was state or city traffic impact mitigation fees. So,
all right, thank you.
All right, I'm going to need Mona's help on this. Maybe you, I don't know. I'm going to recuse myself on item 7.7 as I did at the Transportation Commission meeting when this came up as providing funding for the city for this project. So I need to recuse myself on 7.7.
Okay. Well, you can continue to stay at the dais.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to take 7.7 separately, and the balance of it could be taken as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll need two motions for this consent calendar.
So I move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of 7.7.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Regina, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Now I'll move that we adopt Resolution 7.7.
I'll second.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas is recused.
Thank you.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Mayor, if I could, I failed to answer the other question, Mr. Smith. Yes, it is the eastbound off-ramp that we're talking about here. This is the closeout of all the funding and the payments on the project.
All right, thank you. Item 8, public comment. At this time, anyone from the public can speak on items not on the agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And we will start with oral communications.
Sue Rodman, H Measure L, and City Placerville Fire Safe Council. And I would like to say good on the programs that you have for vegetation management this year that were in the budget hearings yesterday. But we need to do more than that. There are still a lot of streets in Placerville that have down and dead tree limbs and sometimes whole trees left over from December storms that really need to be cleaned up in city right-of-ways. And those are above and beyond the goat programs and the however many acres it was that we were going to do anyway. We need to get that under control. And because this is not the end of storms, and those trees and that down vegetation is a hazard. And we need to enforce the city ordinance on ourselves. So we need to get that chipper in service more than 5 days a year and get that vegetation taken care of.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening, Kathy Lishman. At the April 12th council meeting, item 6.3 was the Miners on Main presentation, and I know the council was really excited about it, but there's a lot to consider in a program like that, something that's brought to you cold that you hadn't asked for. I know there was a lot of interest in it, but I'm concerned that it may not have any place really for public input on public property, and it needs to be carefully considered. The historic information needs to be accurate and verified, and the right program may not have exactly been presented to you. I don't know what you received. I don't know what Cleve is working on. I don't know what they have in mind, but I think you need to be very cautious. The other thing I wanted to say is I appreciated the points Jackie made at the last council meeting on item 12.2 in reviewing the El Dorado County report on homeless and looking at the options. And it seemed like other council members agreed with some of her concerns. The city doesn't seem like a partner with the county. I agreed with that. Jackie said it seems like the homeless are being pushed into the city and dropped off. And we are a very small population here to be carrying the burden of that. Closing the Pollock Pines Center just puts more impact on the city, and the county having no place for a homeless camp themselves. That needs to be improved. The motels on Broadway are working businesses that bring in TOT tax, and we're asking too much for Broadway. We need to consider, and Jackie made this point, we need to consider what's good for the community, not just what's good for the homeless. I appreciate the cleanup efforts that have been going periodically in different areas of homeless camps. And at the last meeting, I asked if any of the homeless had helped with the cleanup. Nobody answered my question, but afterwards I found out that no one had. I know it's been brought up before that when the homeless get off a bus, they're given a tent. Perhaps in trying to help the homeless, some people, in giving them tents and dropping off clothing for them, are trying to help, but the tents and the clothing are left behind when the homeless move on and the community is left for the cleanup.
Thank you, Kathy.
Kirk Smith, I didn't plan to come up, but I just wanted to echo the comments of Ms. Lishman regarding the project that was described previously about miners on Main. She made good points that are worthy of you all considering. I wanted to update it with just 2 items. I did talk to the city manager to find some information about status, and I was able to locate Doug Helm, who was the person who spoke before you. I found Doug to be very cooperative and very helpful. He described the idea that he's got a team of about 30 people, and everybody here has had that kind of situation where you've got a big group and everybody wants to play chief and make some tweaking and some adjustments. So you adjust something here, somebody wants to change it there. So the locomotive has probably gotten quite a ways out, but he was receptive to hearing more, and I think a number of historic groups could come together and offer some constructive suggestions that I think they would be receptive to even at this later stage. So I just thought I'd update what was offered because it is important. And it's in the Chamber's interest to do something that is respected by historians, something that's helpful, because we do have people coming from all over the world. The museum down the street has a big map of the world, and then on the back of the United States. Every time a visitor comes in, they ask you, put a dot on that map where you're from. It's pockmarked all over the place. There's not much left in the world that doesn't have representation of visitors. Antarctica might be one of them. Madagascar, you name it. A lot of the Fiji Islands, the islands of the South Pacific. So it's in our interest to do the best job we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Jonathan Gainsborough. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I wrote a couple things down. First of all, congratulations on the passing of the state agreeing with the state legislature, Assembly Bill 2553, the declaring of a homeless housing emergency housing crisis declaration allows us to bypass the CEQA, the environmental, the zoning, and other red tape. But if we count on that to eliminate all of the other red tape that will be in the path of getting a homeless shelter open, whether it's 60 beds or 80 or 100, before the fire season, which we have offloaded to September. Of course, we know the hottest temperatures begin in August and continue on. Let's not delude ourselves that if you don't fight for the shelter, we will not have the ability to honor Martin Boise and empty the Broadway homeless, which now has 50 to 60 homeless. I don't want to waste time saying that it must have been the county sheriff's force that bulldozed a homeless camp in Cameron Park within the last couple of weeks. That risks a Martin Boise civil rights litigation that I'm not going to go toward. But I'm saying we're glad that we are not offloading the deplorable situation at Upper Broadway, or shall we call it Newtown Road. The responsibility, though, is not to talk about the four out of the five or 5 out of the 6 properties that happen to be in Placerville. I drove by Perks Court. I hope that you all have driven by there. I've been by there more than once. The lower area with the houses that can be removed that are trashed is perfect and is secluded. To say it can't be done, you know, in your own life and in your leading of the city and the county, the city of Placerville, many things that can't be done have been done because they didn't know that they couldn't do it. Let's get it done. In Jesus' name, God bless you all. Thanks for the progress that's been made.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right. Regina, do we have any written comments?
No, we do not, Madam Mayor. We do not.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks to all those that gave thoughtful comments tonight. We will move on to item 9. Or sorry, there is no item 9, there is no 10, there is no 11. We're at 12.1. And this is regarding our broadband master plan project. And Mr. Morris has this report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you recall, back in May of 2021, so just almost a year ago now, the council entered into agreement with Entry Point Networks to prepare a broadband master plan for the city. That was completed in October of 2021, and the cost of that contract was $25,000, or the not to exceed figure of $25,000. We worked with the company, and they actually did it for quite a bit less than that. When that was finished, we continued with that funding that had been set aside and prepared additional plans in terms of how we want to move forward and looking at a pilot project. They have prepared some draft plans of how the pilot project would work. They also did some work for the new subdivision up on Clay Street. They provided a design for the conduit and boxes to provide future fiber service to those new homes when they're built. So there's quite a bit of work that they've been doing, and in addition, regular meetings with us, we've had 2 meetings now with Marshall Hospital as a potential user of the pilot project. They are extremely interested, and so those are some of the things that we've been working on, and looking forward to being able to do this pilot project. They have now that $25,000 that was set aside is expended. It's no longer there. And in order for us to continue with the project and move it forward, we're bringing this agreement to you for approval to allocate an additional $30,000 out of ARPA funds to continue the project. And that will allow us to continue the process that we're going through right now. There's a scope of work that is listed in the agreement, which includes grant writing services and et cetera, to help us figure out how for sure we're going to fund this. And there'll also be some other analysis that we'll go through as part of that. I've also contacted them, for example, with the Broadway Sidewalks project coming up this next year, to be able to do a design work for Broadway sidewalks. So the conduit, so that we can put the conduit and boxes in the street when we do that project. So we're trying to stay ahead of that and prepare for that, the time when we can actually hook up to fiber and put some fiber in those conduits. But at this time, I'm requesting the council give us authority to continue to work with Entry Point Networks to prepare this pilot project and continue implementation of our broadband master plan. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Quick question. What's the time frame for, in terms of grant writing services, and when we would find out potentially if there was other funding available for us? What kind of time frame are we looking at?
It's happening now. I know that there are some, I was on a webinar just the other day, and there is some funding available coming open in May and June this year at the state level. And so we want to take advantage of those. Entry Point has now hired their own grant writer, so they have their own grant writer on board. I know that, as you heard last night, we have Eris over in Chief Wren's department. There's also we've been using and training to do grant writing, so it can assist with that process. So I believe over the next 2 months we will become very active in applying for grants and seeing what is out there. I participated in a phone call today with a federal lobbyist, not our lobbyist, but another one that works for SACOG, who outlined some issues and sent me some more information about potential funding for broadband that we can look into. So we're regularly seeking that funding and looking at what is available. Some of it we're still waiting for the guidelines to come out to say, what is there and what is available, but we're constantly looking at it. So.
All right, great. Are there any other questions for Cleve? Okay. With that, we'll open this up to the public. Item 12.1. All right. I see no takers. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for a motion or discussion.
I'll move that we adopt the resolution as presented.
I'll second.
All right. We have a first and a second. Ms. O'Connell, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say that I think this is a really exciting project, and I'm glad to see it moving forward. Thank you. And that we're staying on it. All right, item 12.2. This is a presentation from Dorado Disposal. And Cleve, would you like to introduce this item? Or?
Pierre.
Oh, Pierre, sorry. Pierre.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Staff is asking the council to receive a presentation from Dorado Disposal on their proposed annual rate increase request for the collection of solid waste and recycling and the organics waste collection program within the city. Each year, Dorado Disposal makes such a request to the city to review rate adjustments, primarily based on two factors. One is the Consumer Price Index, CPI, for California, and the Producer Price Index, or PPI, for number 2, diesel fuel. The CPI increase is 4.226%, and the fuel adjustment is 2.361% for a net adjustment of 6.58%. With regards to Senate Bill 1383, this is going to cause another significant impact, is the cost to implement this bill. SB 1383 is going to require, or does require, a 50% reduction of organic waste disposal by 2020 and 75% reduction by 2025, and that's primarily talking about food waste. The purpose of 1383 basically is is beyond the reduction in trying to reduce material to the landfill, but it is an effort to reduce emissions of what's called short-lived climate pollutants. The required programs include 1, collection and recycling of organic waste from residences and businesses, 2, recovery of edible food from food service businesses, such as grocery stores, restaurants, and then 3, procurement requirements that will require the city to use products made from recycled organic materials such as renewable energy, compost, and mulch. Staff has determined that the annual recovered organic waste product procurement for the city is 871 tons per year, which is based on our population. And staff has been in consultation with CalRecycle staff trying to determine, exactly what does this procurement mean? Is the city required then to actually find a vendor that has recycled mulch or compost that the city would then purchase? Can we utilize, if you recall, when the city adopted its organics ordinance, we also amended other sections of the code, such as the requirement that if certain projects that are doing landscaping, that they're required to also utilize recycled compost and mulch. Can we use that amount then that are triggered by these other projects as far as meeting our obligations? So we're trying to explore all of these different factors that may also assist with us in meeting a target. CalRecycle calls it a target, so I don't know if we have to exactly meet 871 tons per year. It's a lot. So anyways, we are exploring that, and we'll certainly report back to council when we have those details resolved. There was also a local assistance grant program for fiscal year 2021-22. The city has received a grant from CalRecycle in the amount of $21,070 to assist the city in implementation of SB 1383. And eligible costs may include administrative oversight, internal staffing costs, contract services to perform education, public outreach, program evaluation, and monitoring, which these are required of the city to implement the 1383. So hopefully that will defer some of our staff costs. So with that, staff is recommending that the council receive a presentation by the El Dorado Disposal staff, which are here, and basically they will review with you the company's performance standards, the annual collection rates per the CPI and fuel increases, and Senate Bill 1383 organics collection and recycling requirements, and the pilot program they've been engaged in, and the impact cost of implementation of the collection of organics. Staff proposes to return to the council on May 24th with a resolution for the adoption of proposed rate increases. And that concludes staff's report. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our El Dorado Disposal staff to give their presentation. Thank you.
Good introduction. Oh, okay, we're back. Thank you for the introduction, Pierre. Good evening, everybody. I first want to say that Jeff and I meet with Pierre and Cleve monthly, and we really appreciate the constructive teamwork we're able to have and kind of navigate some of these really complicated topics that are sent our way. So with that, I'll dive in. The topics we want to discuss this evening are our performance standards from 2021. We'll go into the CPI, which Pierre alluded to, as well as some organics information, what we're learning from our pilot program, and then the impacts of rates with all this 1383. So a little hard to see that maybe from where you're sitting. Sorry for that. I'll kind of run through it, but our performance standards are missed pickups, which can't be any more than 5 per 1,000. Across the board there, the most we have is about 11 in July, kind of the busy season. If you calculate that based off of the total customers we have, we are well below the missed pickup level there. Our call answer rates have to be, if anyone's calling in, the call has to be answered within 180 seconds, 3 minutes. Our average across the board is 75.16 seconds, with the highest month being at 113 seconds. So it's great to report that, considering the stress our call center has had across the board with the pandemic, with the fire, with a number of things related. Customer complaints are very low as well. We have a great track record of resolving customer complaints instantly and timely. Litter complaints, we didn't have any for the year, surprisingly. There's with the nature of our trucks and just the sheer amount of volume we do, it's not uncommon for something to fly out at a time, and it's not uncommon for us to respond to any of that comes through. Just some stats to report as well. We had 375 new starts for the year of 2021. A new start is just someone either moving into a house, whether it's just someone moving house to house or someone from out of the area starting service. Special pickups involving batteries, oil, we had a total of 628. And then our reporting requirement is that, we have a number of reports that we share and that we do those timely, and we did that at 100% across the board. So another one that's a little challenging to see, but it is the same numbers that Pierre shared with you earlier. That chart there is the month-by-month index for California with the averages of 2020 compared with 2021. The difference was 12.056, which is equivalent to 4.226%, as Pierre stated. Just a quick breakdown of a couple things that were already shared. So total request percentage is 6.587. 4.226% of that is represented by the CPI, and 2.361% of that is represented by the fuel component. Below there's a few examples just to show you what it does to the ratepayer out there. Our three service levels there, 35, 64, 96 gallon, as well as our senior rate. You can see that at a 35 gallon level, it's about a $1.67 increase. 64 gallon, $2.55 increase. 96 gallons, a $3.04 increase. And our senior rate, that's 35 gallon, goes up by $1.20 per month. So I won't spend too much time here, as Pierre kind of told you the highlights of Cal Recycle's 1383 or SB 1383, and just a lot of this is the same things we presented here a few months back in more detail, as well as sharing those pretty thick leaders guides with y'all. The goal of 1383 is reducing short-lived climate pollutants in California. It requires the state to reduce organic waste by 75% by the year 2025. It requires 20% of currently disposed edible food to be recovered for human consumption by 2025, and has significant policy and legal implications for state and local governments. So why? Why is 1383 moving forward? Well, Cal Recycle references these main reasons: rising sea levels, reduced snowpack, wildfires, drought, and heat waves. I think something many of us have experienced here. If we move forward here to some of the facts, more than 2/3 of the waste stream is organic waste. It's equivalent to about 6 million tons per year, which is a lot. Food insecure individuals in California, approximately 1 out of every 8, and 1 in 5 children is food insecure, which it's pretty astonishing living in a place like this to hear that. So what does a landfill look like? There you go. If you've never been to a landfill, or if you don't drive by one frequently, it's something that probably escapes your mind fairly easy when you see a picture, and that piece of equipment at the top of that pile is very large. It's probably, I would say, 3 humans high of an average size, and that is quite a pile of waste. So the idea, speaking just very simply, is to get the organic waste out of that pile and turn it into something like this, to where all that food you see in the foreground there is composted through a number of different methods and turned into something that looks like that pile in the background, where it can be sent back to various areas and utilized instead of being buried. So what are we going to do? The shift from the trash cart to the green waste cart. So This is an example from another area, particularly Napa recycling. These are things that all end up in the waste stream currently. I'm sure looking at the pictures, you can relate to many things that you experience during everyday life. So the idea is now to, instead of just to throw those in the trash, get them in that green waste cart so they can be composted with your green waste. 1383 also includes food soiled papers, so saturated napkins, pizza boxes, things like that are uncoated, like a coffee filter, a paper plate, and you name it. So those are things that are all included. Some other components of SB 1383, a number of things that Pierre alluded to as well. We don't play the largest role in, but we will play roles in team working and assisting. The food recovery is a big one, getting edible food to the people in need. Working with Pierre and Cleve, the team working with El Dorado County to kind of work on the infrastructure and the programs for this. Infrastructure is another big thing. Where does all this organic waste go? Just because they flip the switch on the regulation doesn't mean there's places to take it. So this is something you will see increase and improve over time. More places to take it, more capacity to accept it, and hopefully closer to the places that are generating. The procurement targets, so what happens when the food waste turns into the compost, the dirt, what do you do with it, right? And so there's procurement to get it back to the city and utilize it, put it to good use. Another stat that was already mentioned, the city will be required to procure a target of 871 tons per year, which is a number based on population. For reporting, it is more reporting, so the brunt of it will fall on the county. The city will own some of that as well as us. El Dorado Disposal will own a portion as well. El Dorado County plans on purchasing a program called the Recyclist, which is designed specifically for this and will hopefully aid and streamline in the reporting requirements. So the pilot programs. We currently have pilot programs in Placerville. We have them in El Dorado County. We have them in Cameron Park and El Dorado Hills. 500 customers and growing is represented in Placerville alone. There's about 1,700 plus customers total in our pilot program spread across the county. What we're trying to learn and understand is a number of things you see there. So one, in the kitchen bucket, right? Is this thing worthwhile? Does it provide value to the people in their homes? From what we're learning, we hear a lot of complaints with the buckets, the lid breaking, it doesn't seal great. We've actually found them in the garbage. We found them on the side of the road. And it leads us to ask the question, do we need to have them? Is it worth it to inject some more plastic to every customer out there? Another big question is weekly service or every other week service. Right now, your green waste is picked up every other week. The big question there is the ick factor, as we like to call it, how nasty this stuff gets. Can we wait every other week? Are people willing to pay for weekly service? If you haven't tried it at home, it's worth the experiment to see the decomposition, the mold, the smell. Those are the big factors there that are driving decisions, I would say. We do online surveys that change periodically for our customers, and we do call blasting and email blasting to notify customers of these surveys to help us gain feedback, to advise them of any changes. We have our sustainability team doing cold calls to try to ask our survey questions rather than wait for the feedback to come to us, go out and seek that feedback. We get them out on the ground and we flip lids to gauge participation, see if there's just green waste in there or see if we actually have a mixture. If you take a look at these pictures, just to kind of gauge some participation here, it's difficult to tell by that left picture, who's participating or if anybody's participating, because you have a lot of green waste there kind of muffling the load. So obviously, if we were just going off of what we see in a large pile, we would probably assume participation is low. What we've learned with our sustainability team being out in the field is there are some people that are actually participating effectively, and those pictures on the right demonstrate that. And you can see everything from, eggshells and pumpkins to bread to tortillas, and up in the middle top there, you see some nice some mold growing. So the feedback highlights. Our survey has created a vast amount of information, and to share it with you here tonight would probably be a 30-page, a 30-slide presentation, which would take a lot of time. And so this is designed just to kind of pare down the highlights of what we've learned. So by far the ick factor rises to the top of the feedback we're getting. The smells, right? The concerns with the heat in the summer. If we have these problems in the winter, what's the summer going to hold? The insects, the flies, the gnats, the animals, whether it's a raccoon or a bear, it attracts them. And some people even say, hey, this will be better if it's serviced weekly. Now, granted, when we've done these surveys, we don't add rates for biweekly or weekly. And so that's something that we've actually recently rolled out as kind of a round 2 survey, a 1 question. Hey, here's the pros, the cons versus weekly and every other week, and here's the cost associated with each. Are you willing to pay the extra to avoid the ick, or are you okay with letting it ride for an extra week to save cost? I'll tell you, in other jurisdictions, we've had over 3,000 responses with our survey so far, and we're looking forward to what Placerville will show. Cleveland PR have helped us kind of push this survey out recently, and the trend so far is that people are leaning towards every other week by about 2/3. So 2/3 every other week, 1/3 weekly, and that holds across different jurisdictions so far. The last question down there, or I guess I missed a couple, but the other feedback components, a lot of people compost at home and promote the fact that they do that. A lot of people are bringing up the fact of compostable bags, and we've been really careful of how we roll the compostable bags out because there's many types, and once you open that floodgate up, I think we all know what the effect of plastic in the stream can do. And so once this program is launched, we do expect to be able to use compostable bags, but there's going to be one specific type that's kind of known. It's called BPI certified, if I mentioned that right. Okay. But we will get that information out there pretty soon here. And then overall, based on our survey, do people like the program? And you can kind of see it's 50-50 based on the people who are responding. I'll tell you, our 1 question survey with the rates included, we have the ability for people to leave feedback. And I'll tell you, the feedback has been very colorful in regards to the nature of SB 1383 in general, and what people think of it, and we march on. So the big question here, or the big impact, right? So we've talked a little bit about both options here. Weekly service has a number of operational cost drivers. So if you think right now, it'd be adding a route to that off week of your green waste. The cost per home would be $7.59 monthly. And that means adding a truck, adding drivers, adding disposal tonnage costs, which I'll tell you, with the increase in costs we've all seen, the garbage trucks have gone up drastically, and all the costs associated simultaneously. The pros of weekly, obviously when things are serviced more frequently, there's less of that ick factor, so less time things have to sit in your garbage can, or your green waste can, I should say, decompose, smell, rot, you name it. The cons are obviously it takes a lot more resources, and those resources drive the costs up. You can think on your recycle week, you'd be putting out your garbage, your green waste, and your recycle, and you'd have 3 trucks coming through your road that morning. If we move to every other week, the cost is less than half. It's about $2.94 per home monthly. I shouldn't say about it. It is that. The cost drivers are specifically the disposal tonnage and the transportation costs, being that this material has to be diverted to a different location than it currently is. The pros of this one, obviously, it's lower cost, less trucks on the road, and the cons are that the stuff's sitting longer, and the smells and the ick come with that. Do you want to jump in on that?
Sure. I'm Jeff England. I'm site manage the transfer station, and it's a good question to ask. What are the costs related to the every other week service? Because for the resident, what they're going to see is what they see now: the truck driving by and picking up on every other week. So those costs that relate to that every other week service, as Ross alluded to, are really about disposal and transport. And so I just wanted to share some numbers specific to that. Currently, we process about 60 tons of green waste per day. We expect that number to increase with the influx of food waste into the green waste and it being combined. We presently pay $36.50 a ton at Lopez Ag in Sacramento for the disposal and subsequent composting of the green waste. Because the food waste is being added, that will require that we transport that material to a Napa recycling facility, which is in Yolo County. So that disposal will increase from $36.50 a ton to $55 per ton, and the transport cost increases from the $296 to go to Sacramento at Lopez to $527 per load to the Yolo facility. So we're looking at it, and when you get about 20 tons per truckload with a 53-foot trailer that we haul out there, you're looking at about $600 more per load expense for us in that transport and disposal cost. We do about 20 loads per week there. So that's just to kind of ballpark some of those related costs there that you don't necessarily see. And then other additional expenses are that we are adding a sustainability project manager to our sustainability team, and the reporting and the other things are things that we obviously are part of working on out there as well. And then at the end, we're both happy to answer any questions about any of that.
So last bullet point there, you just see that the buckets are worth about 8 cents per home, and that is reflected in those two rates I mentioned up above. So it is an option to kind of take the buckets out of the system and save that rate by 8 cents per home per month. So just to provide an example, and this is for a 64-gallon customer and a 35-gallon customer out there. So if they had a weekly organics rate, and these numbers do include the CPI as well, so this would be an all-in come July. The weekly price would go from $41.28 to $48.87 for the weekly, and it would go from $41.28 to $44.22 for the every other week. The 35-gallon is similar. Obviously, just adds that $7.58 on for weekly, bringing the total to $34.68 for that 35-gallon customer. And then for that every other week service, $27.09 to $30.03 for that customer. So educating our customers is very important. With any new service, especially something of this magnitude, it has a lot of details, and we need to get those details to our customers. And so we're creating a community outreach package currently. It's going to have kind of a look of that picture I showed you. We're very picture-oriented. This goes in, this doesn't go in. The why behind the what in terms of 1383 and all the above. You know, we'd like to have links to our website. We're going to do mailers for every customer that comes out, and there will be an addition to our welcome package for all the organics changes. It's important for us to get out in the community. We have a good track record of getting booths at pretty much any community event we can and utilizing those opportunities to share any relevant information with community members, and 1383 is one of those. Any piggyback opportunities we can get into, we are open for that, and would be open to any recommendations you may have. And then just to point out some great work of the city, Placerville secured $21,070 in a Cal Recycle grant for education and outreach. And we're working with Pierre and Cleve to teamwork some options of how to best utilize that money for our customers. So a little hard to see. from doing research around our local area, this is some impacts of the same programs in different cities, different jurisdictions, and so I know you can't probably read all that, so I'll just highlight some things. And if you look at this later, I'd say that the things to point out here are the dates you see, as well as the amount of numbers across those rows you see. Now, some jurisdictions are dragging the costs out over multiple months, which appears to be lower yearly, but in all in all, it becomes much more costs for the ratepayer for the same program. You'll notice that a couple up there, Sacramento County, for example, started their first increase in March of 2021, and my guess would be that you have to order trucks a year in advance at least to get it by the time you need it. And so when those capital investments are made, they're seeking rates to cover those capital investments. You'll see the same thing out of City of Folsom as well. And City of Folsom has substantial increases in there. We researched that they have what they call a surcharge built in that you'll notice. Another good thing to point out when you're looking at these numbers, you have to think of the population density, the topography, and you also got to consider the commercial base that some of these places have. They're able to subsidize and spread costs across the board. If you think about our community, it's rural. It's pure elevation gain as you move to the east, and the commercial base is fairly small compared to some of these you'll see up here. So moving forward, our program ETA is July 1st of 2022, which is coming soon. Possible delays that we foresee would be the delivery of new trucks, specifically related to supply chain issues. We ordered our trucks back in July of 2021, but we're learning that there's orders being canceled across the board, which is kind of unprecedented. It's never happened in our experience. Pretty interesting to see these types of things happening, not to mention that the cost increases of the trucks alone. A typical side load truck that you see rolling through your neighborhood is over $400,000 as of this year, when last year they were approximately $370,000, which is pretty insane. We don't expect any of these delays to affect Placerville. That's the benefit of us being nice and close to here, as it makes logistics much easier for this area. Hiring drivers has been a huge challenge for us, and it's not a recent challenge. It's a challenge that's been going on for over a year now. Right now, we could hire 8 drivers and maybe ease up the pressure on some of the drivers we have. So that's a challenge that we're constantly analyzing, trying to get creative and figure out new ways to entice people to come in and work for us, and a lot of times it gets down to how much we're paying them. Last thing there is education and outreach and community presentations. Again, it'll be very important for us to get in front of as much people as possible and get this information out once all the numbers are decided and once our outreach packages are complete with the relevant information. So with that, if anybody knows anybody who has a CDL or may need a job doing numerous things up there, from drivers to mechanics to some customer service reps and even our transfer station, we're open for hiring. And lastly, if there's any questions, happy to answer anything here. And there's a link at the bottom there to some CalRecycle information if you want to go digging. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions for Dorado Disposal?
For Dorado Disposal, but I am wondering how those with the pilot project, what they have to say.
So I'm one of the 500 lucky Placerville residents to take part in this pilot project. And I will say that I believe methane is a real problem and we should aggressively be tackling it. And I'm willing to make personal sacrifices to do that. And this program is a personal sacrifice. The X factor is real. It's real. I was talking to my husband who really hates the program and he really hates price increases. And I was like, so what would you prefer, every week or every other week? And he still opted for every other week. I was actually curious, with the survey data that you took where it showed 2/3 of people preferring every other week, was that asking the community on a whole or just the people that have experienced the ick factor?
It's on a whole.
It is,
so
okay.
it's pretty much anybody we can get the question to. So
Okay.
we're utilizing our email lists for the most part, which has been the most successful, but we're getting it on billing statements and pretty much trying to get the link wherever we can so people can, hop on and give their opinion. And we've really geared it towards being a one question. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but it affects you, so we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. I kind of wonder if a lot of people who haven't experienced it, especially going into the warmer months, think that every other week will be just fine, and then they, come August, they may change their mind. And I was wondering, as we kind of figure out what we're going to do with this rate going forward at the next meeting, is it a possible option to start doing every other week, but then if we are getting just tons of complaints from the community towards the end of summer when they've had a chance to try it out, that we could revise that, or is it kind of like a now or never decision?
No, and your first point of people not really knowing what they're choosing, I think is a valuable point. And I think a lot of that's driven by just the cost. It's not impossible to go to weekly, and we're actually, that was another question asked by El Dorado Hills. Mm-hmm. It can be considered more of a ramp up process, which is totally fine. Okay. The one thing I will add is with the timing it takes to get the resources to add that extra week, mm-hmm. we would need to know probably a year in advance. And so I would say it's a conversation to keep having and to keep communicating and team working. So when the time is right, we can pull the trigger, to get the resources to the people as fast as possible.
Okay. And another question I had regarding infrastructure. So you're not composting it at El Dorado Disposal. It's being hauled to Napa?
Correct. Yep.
And that's like $600 per load is the cost to do that.
Yeah. With the transport expense and the disposal expense combined, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that doesn't include driver time and...
No, really, that total cost on a per load basis is what I'm able to break out to take it on a per load basis. And so compared to what we're paying now to haul to Sacramento and pay less per ton is a $600 difference on a per truck load basis.
So it's a $600 difference. So it would be $600 on top of what you're already paying to take it to...
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's the difference. It's,
how much is that?
Total per load, what am I paying? I think it's about $1,100 or something right now.
Okay.
I have to look. Kurt's got my notes. And we're also happy to provide backup on anything, for you guys along these lines. In fact, Cleve and Pierre have requested backup, and that'll be coming for you guys to evaluate before you make a decision in the 2 weeks.
Okay. And then are the gains that we would be getting from pulling food waste out of the waste stream being lost on the fossil fuels being used to drive, the loads many miles away?
Sorry. There's a lot of this. In this situation, because we're going more miles with the material, one could argue that, you've got that additional going up into the air, that everything is really situational relative to how far you have to take the material and where it's going to end up going. One of the rather daunting challenges for the city is the procurement requirement. And what Cal Recycle is looking for is something of a closed loop, as it were, relative to this material going out, becoming compost, and then coming back into the community. And because they are working with the county, that's going to be critical, because this is an ag community, mm-hmm. and if it's actually going to be that recycled material coming back, we foresee a role there. Waste Connections has purchased company in Ukiah. which is developing a composting capability, and it's big. And we have, long story short, facilities in Fairfield that enable transportation efficiencies that may mean that while the material is going to Ukiah, we can do other things to mitigate those expenses. And long story short, we would be able to internalize that, develop that material as compost, and then be able to bring it back ourselves potentially to help meet this procurement requirement. We're working through, all of those rather large things that are associated with 1383. That's really just one moving piece of it. But it does tie to all these other things related to disposal and transport.
Are there any incentives for getting a composting plant made locally?
So Greg Stanton, who's the former director of the El Dorado County Environmental Department, is working for the county on a project related to identifying those types of opportunities, whether it's a biodigester, whether it's a cogen type plant. They're working with different companies, Mountain Enterprises and PG&E and those kind of folks relative to looking at potential properties and which systems make the most sense. Biodigesting, you can spend from $3 to $25 million like that on a facility, but they're still developing technically. They can be really persnickety relative to the composition of the material that goes into them. And so there are a lot of those things that are in play, but a lot of them are scalable. And so Stanton and others in the community, the county environmental department are really looking at what their choices are to meet this infrastructure demand. And as we are developing, as Waste Connections is looking at ways through our Ukiah facility and others, there's a lot of moving pieces right now that relate to something more local. We would love to not have to haul it far away. Obviously, if our trucks could make a direct, drop rather than take it to the MRF, touch it twice, haul it away again, that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments before we give?
The county doesn't require trash pickup. How are you all kind of taking care of that in the county? Just kind of curious.
Well, that's a good question related to the fact that they are a non-mandatory area.
Right.
And that's a critical difference as it relates to El Dorado Hills, Cameron Park, and City of Placerville, which does have mandatory service. The county's approach is, and there are a couple of other nuances related to the county situation.
I guess the question, are they responsible for the same percentage of
I believe so.
Production as we are?
I believe that the procurement and other requirements are all essentially the same, rather parallel path tied to population and densities. They have areas in the county that are exempt relative to population density, things like that we've been working through with the environmental department. To get back to the county's approach. So in the county, we've got three areas, an A, B, and C. And A is primarily the corridor along Highway 50. We've got another area that is the old Sierra Disposal area, Georgetown out to Volcanoville, and then south out to Somerset and, Fairplain.
I really don't want to get too far into what the county's doing because that's out of our... I was curious, though, for the purpose of just comparison, how many people in the county compost and do their own thing, and how many people in the city compost and do their own thing. But we're still spreading the expense off among everybody regardless. Everybody's going to get
very true
tagged exactly the same. So anybody that says, I compost, I don't need this, I don't want it, we're still going to collect your $2.40 or whatever that number is.
Right now, the CalRecycle hasn't attached a relative value to composting, and we would be in the position of having to provide this for everyone. But just to cut to the quick on the county situation, we are developing and will be proposing a gate rate for self-haul of organic material that the county expects would meet this requirement to provide service, organic service to county residents, especially relative to their non-mandatory nature and the fact that in certain areas of the county we don't provide green waste service at all yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So there's no recognition of self-composting in your own gardens and doing your own thing?
Not that we've heard from Cal Recycle. The ultimate goal is to get the organics out of the trash, as we've said, and the ultimate metric then will be the tons that are going to landfill relative to our population.
So there's no expectation that an individual is going to be required to give you their compost, just that they'll pay to give you their compost. Because if people compost, that they can just do it there, or do they need to give you a shovel out of their compost pile every 2 weeks?
Well, what I will tell you is there's a cart flipping expectation, and we're supposed to be out there looking to see that people are doing it right. We can tell you that the state will begin fining jurisdictions, county or city of Placerville in 2024, if we're not doing it to the level that the state expects. And I'm not ready to predict exactly what they're going to do relative to enforcement. We have an expectation that we'll have a role. The city will have a role, and that they are going to want to identify if people are participatory or not. What they choose to do prior to 2024, and then how to do that. But they do expect the city to implement enforcement procedures in 2 years if people aren't compliant.
And compliant means that stuff ends up in that trash and not in their compost pile.
I don't. I'm not sure.
We haven't got that far, have we?
Yeah, no,
okay.
we haven't.
Right,
Dennis, I might be able to add something to your question. Well, first I'll say I love composting. It's a much nicer experience than these buckets, but there's a lot of food that you don't compost, like bones and raw meat scraps and meat and cheeses and stuff like that. Right. And those things we are supposed to put into this bucket, which is what greatly increases the ick.
Yeah, especially if that's the one.
But so even if you were composting your veggie scraps and your eggshells and your coffee grounds, you're still going to have, meat scraps and all that stuff that you would need to put into the bucket. So I've got a question. Maybe Terry would be the best one for this. In terms of the procurement, Terry, do you by chance, and it's okay if you don't have this off the top of your head, do you by chance know how many tons of mulch we purchase?
We don't purchase a whole lot. I think we picked up about 200 cubic yards this past year.
Do you know what that converts to in terms of tons?
It's hard to say because it depends on what the weight of the mulch is.
Is that mulch or ground cover?
That's usually playground mulch, and we don't use a whole lot of ground cover.
And that's different than this stuff for gardens. Is that? Exactly. Am I understanding that correctly?
This
is more like a gardening type of a mulch, and not a wood chip type of thing for playgrounds and such.
Right.
I would probably assume gardening, just because
agriculture,
there's green waste, but a lot of other material in there. Yeah.
So what is the city to do with 871 tons of compost?
So that's what I was just going to ask, if they would, because in our discussion with Cleve, he presented me with numbers, and I would like the public to hear about this, and because we have to, and we also have to buy that back. So that's an added expense. That's my understanding.
Well, we believe, it says procure. To me, that means I'm going to have to, I guess you can procure it without buying it, but I'm assuming I'm going to have to buy it back because these companies that are doing this, it's a business for them, and so they're going to want to sell it back. Jeff, Ross, do you agree with that, or?
Well, if it's us, obviously, we're in the business to make a couple bucks, but this is so onerous that it's really hard to predict. How we would be looking at it, along those lines. We haven't gotten so far as to say, hey, we're going to make compost and here's what we're going to charge anybody back for it. Yeah. We're still developing the facilities right now, but as we confront this, we see ourselves as having to partner and help meet this procurement requirement. But I'm not expert yet to tell you what you're going to do with 820 tons of composting.
Did the experts at the state figure that out when they made this law? I mean, it seems like that would be the.
I'll tell you, the field director that we're working with now has been really helpful for clarifying some of these kind of things lately, and we've had a couple of really good conference calls with them. And if we've got specific questions along those lines, Pierre and Tim with County Environmental are very good at asking them, and we do have a good back and forth with Cal Recycle. And I would suggest that any specific questions that Ross and I really aren't the best to answer yet, you get to us and to Pierre, and we'd be more than happy to get them in front of our field folks at Cal Recycle.
Thank you. There's a lot of sarcasm in my questions, but I guess a real important question would be is to at least, if not now, at some point in the future, and we will have to deal with this, is what is the true cost going to be to the residents of the city and the city itself to manage this? I mean, we're going to have to find, it's just an interesting thing. How many tons was it?
Exactly, that's what I wanted to be.
871 tons of.
We get about 22 tons on a 53-foot trailer.
But that usually shrinks down quite a bit by the time it gets done composting.
Jeff,
Yes.
would you get in that microphone so we
Okay.
can?
So I guess the question is, I know we can't answer it now, but there's going to be this cost associated with that return, and it doesn't sound like we have that answer yet. And
No,
but
sir.
we'll know by 2024 what their expectations are. Is that kind of a?
Well, I think we'll know sooner. I think that, the pandemic really delayed an awful lot of implementation, and they've been understanding relative to the commercial implementation. They gave us time. We've done really well. The city and the county have done really well getting the AB 1826 compliance with the restaurants in particular there. So I do see that. I think that we're going to be fine with Cal Recycle, and that they've been really working with us. What they've really been looking for is a plan, and that we're marching forward, and Cleve and the county have been able to provide that.
Well, after talking with Cleve, that's one of my big concerns, and I would like it answered, is what we're expected by population to produce, and that's a massive amount that's going to come back, and
Our hills are going to be getting taller.
our hills are going to, we're not going to have hills anymore. We'll fill in all the valleys. No, but I really think that's really a legitimate question, because they're going to send it back, and what are we going to do with it?
Pot farming. Sorry.
So it sounds like they've been flexible on the implementation of this, but not flexible on the 75% reduction by 2025. Is that the case?
I would say that at this point, that's a fair statement.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that I think everyone involved in this huge rollout is just doing a tremendous amount of work, and I appreciate all the effort that's going into it. It's just amazing that in 2022 we're going to have a 75% reduction in 3 years, and there's still big questions about procurement and infrastructure and composting facilities locally and all that. But I don't think it's any fault of any of yours. I think it's just.
I was just going to say that this is not a personal thing, but I feel we have a right to object to a lot of the
Do you actually see this being successful in this period of time? Because we all thought that recycling aluminum and plastic was a great idea, and then all of a sudden we're having to pay people to take it rather than people paying us to take it. It's gotten to the point of
And
You know,
glass.
I mean, you know, it just seems like this is another great idea, but it's not thought all the way through. And I don't, you guys aren't.
It's not
You guys
there.
know a lot about this, but it's kind of a question I put out in the ether. So I don't know.
You know what how I'll try to answer that is what I know anecdotally in well-meaning communities is that the ick factor matters, and it affects participation, whether it's a weekly situation or not.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm afraid will differentiate the organics from the recycling, because you're right, recycling has been, we've even adapted to China sword and those things, so we're better, getting better at recycling all the time. I would like to think the same path, will occur with organics, but when it gets down to how it works out in the field, that ick factor, it's gnarly, dude.
Yeah.
And we just have to see how that plays out,
All right.
I think.
Thank you for entertaining me. I mean, I know this is a challenging situation for you guys, and having to carry this out because this is the business you're in is kind of what you do. But it's still a heavy lift for our community and for everybody to do this. So thank you for what you're doing too.
So I also would like to pose a question to the rest of the council. I think there's room for us to write to somebody, whoever thought up this latest ridiculous thing. I would really like to send a letter of opposition from our council.
Yeah, at the very least, 871 tons every single year. What are we going to do with that? And they want us to buy it back. I understand that South Lake Tahoe and other people have exemptions from this program, and I think it's worth saying, we want to work with you, we're going to, do this part of your program, but, we want an exemption from taking it all back, because we have nowhere to put it. We don't use it.
Well, there is the potential, as Pierre mentioned, that perhaps we can calculate the materials that projects use, which would make sense, I think. If you have a bunch of fill for a hotel or something like that. But it's an unknown.
I don't think you can use compost.
There's too many unknowns.
Because it's too fluffy. It doesn't compact.
No,
Yeah.
and there's just too many unknowns.
Well, but you can require them to use it in their,
Garden beds.
in their garden beds
Yeah.
and stuff, in their in what they do as their planting.
Every year?
Yeah. Not every year. No, I'm talking about new development the first year they come in. So a new hotel, we could require it, correct, Pierre, in there, and our ordinance does require it currently in their.
But how much
in their
new
show
development are we?
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
We're not going to have a lot,
No.
but you could require their new subdivisions, et cetera. You could,
But
but it's not going to be. It's not going to be 871
Well,
tons.
and I also wonder, as a rural community, do we produce as much as people do in the city? I think about people who take their scraps to feed their neighbors' chickens.
Right.
And I know this last year I got a dog. You know how many less scraps I have with a dog now? Yeah, I just wonder the fairness of this program.
I
and the
know, and to
realistic-
have it, like I've got a garbage disposal. I'm not going to keep this stuff to smell in my yard for up on for 2 weeks. I'm going to get rid of it, and I just think this is a very poorly. I know the state's they've put a lot of stuff on us, but this has just got to be one of the worst. I'm sorry. And this is nothing personal to either. We're just.
We do not take it personally.
Oh, thank you.
I think we'd both be lying if we say we didn't understand.
Question for Pierre. Were you aware of the South Lake Tahoe exemption? Do you know how they got that, or?
It's an altitude exemption.
No, my ear certainly perked up when I heard that. I wouldn't think that City of South Lake Tahoe has an exemption. When I read through the Q&A that CalRecycle provided, they sort of outline what some of the exemptions are, rural area and some other circumstances. But
I believe it was based on elevation was the criteria, and I don't know why that elevation
Why?
is. If you're above a certain elevation, I'm looking at cities here. Monopoda,
Yeah, it
Amador,
is an elevation
or-
exemption. Something like 4,500 or something more around there.
Maybe bears.
Yeah.
We have
Bears eat the
scrap. I can tell you that a bear has dragged my trash can down my street and I'm not even in the program yet. So
That's another thing to consider, you know, the animals, the wild animals we have around here, and what is this going to draw?
So given all what you've heard, which is probably you've heard this before, do you have any recommendations as to how to go about, you know, from your experience working with Cal Recycle, and is there an appeal process that we can look at? Can you point us in the right direction in terms of those options?
You know, to me, I would start with specific questions that we could put together into an email that could come from Pierre and El Dorado Disposal. I think would be a start. You've got some very good specific questions that relate to different areas. And I think that, at least to me, sounds like a good start. We have a good working relationship with our field director at Cal Recycle, and again, we talk to them quarterly or so, and we email each other on a regular basis. So there's definitely a communication opportunity direct from the council through Pierre and El Dorado Disposal to Cal Recycle to at least get questions started, and it could go from there.
So my experience, because I had a chance to talk with some guys from Cal Recycle and sit through a bit of a seminar with them, and their position is they're not there to change the rules. They're there to enforce them, but they're doing that through education and partnership with communities. So they are. You're right, and that's what they said. Is they're very willing to work with us, but they're not there at all to change. They're there to enforce and implement, or implement and enforce. So they're not a legislative branch. They're not going to change the code. They might give us a little waiver here and there to get over some humps, but their goal is to get us over that hump.
Yeah, quite often the answers I've heard back from Cal Recycle is that they're simply enforcing the legislation that's been adopted. Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, we can ask them really good questions, but that's probably not going to change the outcome.
No, but we might get clarification.
Oh, yeah, we'll get clarification that eventually we're still going to have to follow the rules.
It's like,
the
so
people
what?
that make the rules are the ones we need to have the conversation with, if they're even willing to listen.
Yeah.
And I really do think that Jackie's right, that the rural communities should be treated differently, because the folks up here we do things differently. Everybody's got gardens and animals, chickens, you know, I mean, I have people that, at one time at my building, the restaurant saved all their lettuce and scraps and stuff, and a lady that raised chickens came and got it, you know.
Yeah.
So all these things are quite a bit different than the big cities, so.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm going to give the public an opportunity
Mayor,
to ask them questions. Yes.
Could I just one more thing? I know that, I believe it was when I was talking to someone, maybe staff or a council member, discuss the idea of could we have a hybrid of what we've pulled out here? So could we do every other week, say from November through March, and every week from April through October? I know that may put some burden on you, but maybe something that could be feasible based on the ick factor, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very common question, and one that really makes sense. It sounds like it. The issue for us is that the capital investment, the trucks that we need, the head count we need to fulfill a weekly service, once we have it, we can't really turn it off, so to speak. And so it's something that we would have to build to and keep, or just not do in terms of weekly service.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Thank you. All right. If you would take a seat, I'm going to allow the public to make comments and ask questions. I may invite you back up if something comes up that we haven't already talked about. So we will open this up to public comment.
I have a bunch of comments. The first one is it's very crucial to have education. As I heard, there's money that the city has, they have for education, and that's absolutely crucial. A couple of months ago, I was at the Diamond Springs Flea Market, a political sign-up table, had a delightful conversation with someone whose political views were much different than mine, and one of the topics that we agreed on was this one, because, yeah, we understand the concept, but nobody's told us how it works. So Compost, I don't know how it works. I've got one, a garden, but I don't know how to do it. So, something that's made really simple in flyers, bulletins, articles for the paper, that's going to be crucial to make it happen. As far as the costs, we all know how that kind of goes down. The suggestion about transportation is going to burn up energy. We've heard the same arguments about electric vehicles. And yet we've also remember when cell phones were the size of a shoebox. And I remember when the first microwave came to Placerville, and it would cost you 2 months' salary for the average family to pay for. Now it's $10 at a yard sale. So it's going to come down, but you need that education. And as far as the exemptions, I haven't heard of exemptions, but what I have heard of is that communities have been able to push the date back, that there's ways to do that. And that's something I'd hope you find out about. The last thing is, I have no idea how the numbers work. I just assume that if you've got to take stuff all the way down to Yolo County, it's going to be more expensive for us than it is for those who live in Folsom and Sacramento and so on. But eventually you'll get those kind of plants built up here in this area. And if we have to buy it back, isn't, welcome to wine country? Can't they start using compost in their vineyards and other agricultural uses around here? If they start to give pot licenses to have that industry going, and they're going to need some stuff to grow with, hey, it's free. So I think these kind of things can work out in a period of time. I don't know if you got all the answers tonight, but those are some of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Sue Rodman, I have not been part of the pilot project, but since they gave their last presentation, I've been looking at what I put into my trash can. And my question would be, if I am putting the same things in my regular trash that I would put in this green recycle, why couldn't, and I get a weekly pickup of my regular trash, what would be the difference of having that same truck pick up the trash that is the recycle organics and separately pick up I could put it in 2 separate bags. That would be pretty easy. So couldn't they, without having to buy a whole bunch more trucks, because if you're doing to a weekly pickup, you've got twice the trucks with twice the impacts on our streets, and those are heavy trucks. They do make an impact on our streets. Twice of the fuel that they're going to use, and therefore put more pollution into the air from the trucks, versus getting the methane out. And methane is a terrific pollutant. But where's the balance there? I don't see that we have figured out what the balance is. And if you're having to haul this stuff all the way to Yolo County, that's a big impact on how many trucks you're going to have, how long they're going to have to be on the road, how many drivers, how much time, and how much fuel, and what that's going to put into our skies as well. So I think this is another one of those things that the legislature and maybe our governor has come up with that sounds great, but the implementation of it has not really been worked out well to figure out what their real trade-offs are. Because I think I could do every 2 weeks and be okay. But the raccoons that live in my neighborhood would definitely want to be able to get at that stuff if it was possible. Because they already come and take the grapes when they're ripe off my little vineyard that's right on my little grapevine that's right on the patio. It's a lattice on the patio, and they come and harvest those grapes every fall. As soon as they're ripe, the raccoons invade. So I'm sure that they would come after anything else that was edible. So I think, and like, I haven't had a bear yet, but we do have rats and raccoons and squirrels that would definitely try to get at this stuff. So it seems like we just really haven't figured this all the way out. And I would be one of those people without any experience would rather keep it to biweekly, just because of the extra impact from the trucks and the extra fuel that they would use. And so I'm willing to give it a try, but I think it's not well thought out.
Thank you, Sue.
Hello again, Kathy Lishman. I have to say that I went to the home show, and one of the only tables that I stopped at was the one from Dorado Disposal, because I was very interested in this program, and I was very surprised to find out that you put meat in it. And I also got a very nice green Frisbee. So, and the gal that was there was very good about explaining it. I have a question about the 75% by 2025, but then 20% of disposed edible food recovered for human consumption. I have a question about how that would be done. I'm sure it's not out of the garbage, but I have a friend in San Francisco, and for years they've had a composting program. And, they have different, I don't know what happens when it leaves her house, but they don't put meat in that. And so I'm just wondering why we have to put meat in it. There are bears and raccoons. I live on the top of a canyon, and the deer eat my grapes. But we put pine sol in the can, and we have them grab bags of garbage and take it down the canyon, and then we have to climb down and pick it up. What I do with meat and things like fish stuff, I put it in the freezer until the night before the garbage goes out. But I am very concerned about the ick factor in the summer. And even if it's dumped, your can would still smell bad. I guess a nice idea is to have a bunch of green waste, then put the food, and then it's not in the bottom of the can. But I'm really surprised about putting meat in. But and in Tahoe, most people have bear boxes. If it's the altitude, they're in much better shape than us because the heat is not as bad up there. They wouldn't have as much ick factor. Some people in Placerville don't have yard waste cans, so I assume that they'd have to have one. And there are also people in the city who've gotten special permission not to have garbage pickup, so they wouldn't be able to help. And one last thing unrelated to the recycling, the composting, which I love the idea, but when I find out the details, it's a little... I'm glad to hear Kara's experience. But one thing that happens occasionally is that when the garbage truck puts the can back on the the street, a lot of days you go up and down the street and the cans are all knocked over. And the person who picked up our garbage a few years ago, who retired, never ever did that. So I don't know what it is, but and a lot of times he was always careful about getting the lid back on in case it was raining. So I just would request I wouldn't call and make a complaint because then the person might know who made the complaint. But and it's not probably just my street, but to be more careful about making sure when they put the cans down that they put them on the street, not on the ground.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. One question that came up, and I'll just take a stab at it. You can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. In terms of the edible food waste, that would be collected from grocery stores and big companies, and it wouldn't be the stuff that's thrown in the garbage.
Are they going to deliver it? What's the program for that? I mean, if they're
I don't know.
Probably take the food banks and stuff
I was
like
going to
that.
say, if they're collecting it, the idea of this whole thing
Yeah.
is to compost. I mean,
No. That's to divert. Another component of
Edible
this
food.
program is to divert edible food to feed families.
Okay, so and I'm glad.
So that's I think outside of El Dorado Disposal's role.
I don't know
And-
that.
and
Kathy posed
some
a good
other
question.
facet
I
of
was
this.
curious to that too.
Is that correct? Am I correct in that? Okay. All right. So thank you once again for being here, and we will have more discussion on this at the next council meeting. Or
Yeah, my only thing would ask
With
of
the
the
rates.
council, we will go back and try and ask some of those questions of Cal Recycle,
Mm-hmm.
try to get some answers before your meeting on the 24th. We also, I will say, and I've been working with Ross today, there is a little bit of a question about the noticing for the 24th meeting for the organics portion. The CPI portion, we're good. So we may have to split those two components into another meeting, but we'll work with you guys on that. Make sure we just want to make sure that we're meeting the requirements for that. The other thing I want to mention is we do have this week our utility bill going out. We have information about this on the utility bill and a link to a survey that they can say which would you rather, 1 week or every other week. It does not ask you whether or not you were in the pilot program. We were not able to do that, but we will get some information from that. So we hope to have some of that information we can bring back to you on the 24th also.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, just want to wrap up saying, reducing by 75%, if you're already kind of responsible and you do all you can, it was my issue with the city when they wanted us to reduce water. Well, if you're already responsible and you use as little and you don't water your lawn and all those sorts of things, it's nearly impossible to get to that. And I feel like I'm in that situation with my garbage. A lot of times I produce one bag every 2 weeks. You want me to reduce 75%?
I think that
75%
75% isn't geared towards the individual, but towards California as a whole, reducing 75%. But
it would be
but that's-
Placerville as a whole.
Yeah,
Not California.
The state as a whole. But yeah, it would break down into all the jurisdictions.
Just like with recycling, though, our measurement is going to be, I'm assuming, how much we reduce what's going to the landfill. And that's going to go, they're not going to pull out just see how much food waste is being pulled out. They're going to look at the total amount going to landfill today and then what is happening in 2025. Is that correct, Jeff?
Relative to population, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, it will be an interesting couple of years as this program gets underway. So with that, we will move on to item 13, council reports from other meetings. El Dorado Transit Authority.
We approved the My Ride mileage program, which basically allows people who normally would call for a ride to hire maybe their neighbor or a friend and get reimbursed for mileage. They're having troubles with getting enough drivers and just trying that out as a pilot
I
program.
hadn't heard of that, Jackie. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then...
Is that different than dial-a-ride?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Dial a neighbor.
So it's basically volunteers
Yeah.
that the individual looking for transportation would recruit their own volunteers and get them all signed up with El Dorado Transit, and then Transit would reimburse the drivers.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And I think I'm excited about it. I think it's a great solution, and it will make it easier to reach the more remote parts of the county.
So if I volunteered for my neighbor, the responsibility, though, for like insurance and everything, Transit is not going to have to be involved with all that. So it's on my time.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And then...
Because there's a lot of people do it now and
Right.
don't get reimbursed.
Right.
So
Right.
interesting.
And then we rejected a single proposal for a strategic plan and gave direction to kind of redirect that. That's it.
That strategic plan was because transit has been heavily impacted by the pandemic, that we basically need to reevaluate what transit is going to look like in a big way.
People's habits, how many people are riding, how they're riding.
Exactly.
All that
The
kind of stuff.
ridership is just really down.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed that we did not have, enough RFPs to have the competition needed and move that forward, because it is needed that we reevaluate the direction of transit, but we'll be moving forward. One way or
Well,
another.
so much of the funding, though, to run that program, isn't it? It comes from from the Fed state transportation and then to transit, and
But they don't necessarily stipulate that
I thought
we have to have local fixed routes, or we have to, there's flexibility in how we deliver services.
Okay,
with those
I
funds.
thought some was like fare box recovery and all that, and
Yeah.
right now it's down. So
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jackie. El Dorado County Transportation Commission, you already.
I kind of
Dennis
covered
already-
that. I kind of jumped the gun there a
You
little
kinda
bit, but usually everybody's gone by now, so.
So I brought this. Is there anything in
I
there
pretty much
that
went
you
off of that,
missed?
yeah. No,
Did
not-
you?
I hit the highlights.
Okay.
If there's something no,
Okay.
that's what I was going off.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that was the most thorough report that we've gotten for the commission. in a while.
Boom.
It was just out of place on the agenda.
Yeah,
but that's-
yes, it
that's
was.
Okay. LAFCO?
We adopted the fire MSR and discussed the work plan and budget for 21-22.
MSR. What's that acronym? Sorry.
Yeah.
A service review.
Yeah,
Thank
Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
SACOG, that is Michael Saragosa. He's not here today. Pioneer. Meet tomorrow.
I do have a meeting. How'd you know that?
I'm just
Wow.
omniscient.
Yeah, I have a meeting tomorrow. I'm on the budget committee, and so we're meeting finance committee, and so we're meeting on finance stuff tomorrow. So, yep.
All right. Fire Safe Council.
Pretty much the same thing that I've been reporting. They, I was unfortunately unable to participate in their last meeting, but according to the minutes and what they're doing, they're a really active group, and they're pursuing any grants that are out there. They're working with all the fire officials, and so it's just ongoing, trying to keep the public informed and ask them to please, please, please clean up their properties.
All right. Thank you. 2x2 has not met, and Opportunity Knox is Michael, and he is absent. So that brings us to item 14, request for future agenda items. Do we have any requests? None?
Well, I'm afraid to even talk about it because we might start talking about it. I know, right?
Mona will give you the
Yeah.
eye.
I don't know where to go with this. It has to do with the what do we call those? The campaign signs. There's a whole bunch of them that are now out in the city, and okay, I'm not even going to ask for it. I'll just leave it at that.
We've already discussed this one, didn't we?
We talked about it.
Right, and they've been up,
There's a primary. They're within their 60 days.
and they're oversized. They're not legal
Oh.
sized.
They're what, Dennis?
Go ahead.
So staff has been in contact with me about it, and we're talking about enforcement options.
Okay. Okay, good. Then forget it. We don't need to do that.
All right. So, none there then. 15, city manager and staff reports. We've got the police report. Chief Wren, would you like to highlight anything? Or?
Thank you. Continue to be busy. If you look at our Part 1 UCR crimes, you'll see an increase. It always happens when the weather starts getting nice. Each one of those numbers represents a victim of a crime. So for us, it's at the police department, it's personal. I can't share without getting into details of the cases because they're still active. The first three where you see numbers indicated, those cases are filed with the DA or cleared by arrests. I checked on those before I came in today. and some of the other ones are just still pending suspect contact. One of the benefits of working in a small city is we know who all the bad guys are, so, and they don't hide very well. So I'll answer any questions. We have broken our 4-minute response time, though. I did see that by a second. So we're at 3:59 for our part one, our priority one response time average. So a lot of times we're way down, two minutes, minute 30 seconds, just because got a young force who's out there and really in the neighborhood. So it's been extremely beneficial to us. So.
Refresh my mind again. What constitutes larceny?
Theft. It's your theft-related offenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Okay. The other was vehicle theft. So this is a different theft. Okay.
We've recovered all the vehicles. They've been recovered. Some of them were taken under suspicious circumstances. We believe it was. We used to call them rock rentals back in the 90s when I was working, where somebody would, let me borrow your vehicle, I'll give you something, type of thing, and didn't return them. So.
All right.
I have a question for him. So there was a meeting that happened in, I can't remember where it was, and I heard this secondhand, but somebody attended a meeting for the sheriff's department and some of their guys that might be running for sheriff and things like that. And one of the things that they were lauding is how much of a reduction they have had in their homeless population, and they got a lot of applause for this, for all the good work they're doing. Have we seen an increase in the city in terms of either call volume or contact or new faces?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, without making any accusations.
It's just they're facts. If they're facts, let's talk about them. You know, but
yeah, when a population decreases, say hypothetically in a county, if you have 300 at your start, now you have 30. 270 just didn't get a house.
That sounds familiar. Numbers too, from what I heard, but similar numbers to that.
We know it. I mean, I was out with the officers early this morning that contacted a subject that was from Orangeville. So was dropped off up here. So.
By who?
A non-governmental agency. I will share that. It wasn't a governmental agency. It was a church. So.
Okay.
We find a lot of that occurs.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right. Chief Cordero, would you like to highlight anything for the fire report?
Yes, the colored paper. Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple items of note. Our crews have been really busy last month. For some reason, the calls really picked up in certain arenas. We did have a fire in Placerville a couple weeks ago. Crews responded to a well-established fire. Engine 25 first due. The crews did an amazing job in containing that. And for some reason, again, with the call volume, the challenging calls, the folks have had a lot of vehicle extrications with the jaws of life and whatnot. In and around the city of Placerville, we had a vehicle down the river by the Mosquito Bridge just last week, where one of our personnel had to be lowered down from the CHP helicopter to check for occupants and whatnot. So it's been really busy and challenging for the crews, but they've done a phenomenal job. And just one note on the stats that you'll hopefully saw and will continue with this pace. Our medic units, the total call volume, you'll see a decrease of about 100, and we're hoping that stays that way. And if you notice on the bottom graph, it has to do primarily with the transfers. And transfers, IFTs, interfacility transfers, a lot of those are patients that are being discharged from the hospital that are going home or going to a care facility where they happen to live, and it's not really a medical necessary item. So for years, we've been trying to get away from using our 911 ambulance system to provide that service. And the JPA, who operates the ambulance system, we've implemented a pilot program where we're using private ambulances from the Sacramento region to handle those. So the impact has been substantial for our crews, seeing that reduction in those IFTs. So hopefully the ambulance numbers continue to be low. But crews are doing a great job. It's been really busy. So with that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Chief?
Sure. What was the source of the fire?
I was going to ask that. Thank you.
Cause under
I was
investigation.
asking for Kara, actually.
Where was
Did you say it was under investigation, or we know, or the fire? You said there was a rather large
Yeah,
fire.
we had
engine
a
25
residential structure fire off Carla, off James Drive,
Okay.
just on the north side of town.
Did that turn into a vegetation fire or anything?
No, it was confined to the building of origin.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. All right, no other questions for the Chief? All right, we will, I will let,
Upcoming items?
did you want to?
I just want to mention one thing. I should have done this at the beginning under announcements, either Terry or I, or while Eldorado Disposal was here. We do have our spring cleanup day coming, June 4th, from 8 to noon, correct, Terry? 8 to noon on June 4th at the normal place, our Mosquito Road Park and Ride. So that information out. Just so you know, that information, we do have a flyer going out in our utility bill this week that has both the information about the cleanup and about the survey that I mentioned over. It's a back-to-back flyer. So
Okay.
that information
And
is going out.
what's not accepted?
What's not accepted, Terry? There's a whole list of items, but
Yeah, mostly it's motorized things that have oil or gas in them. There's also large appliances, mattresses are not allowed, and then this year there are construction waste has been added to the do not allow.
Okay.
and we do not have, we didn't have this last time either, but the snow line hospice to collect the electrical and
Correct.
stuff
They
like that.
they take some used things, but we have not been able to get they don't have the staffing to do that, so that's
they won't be
continuing.
there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Item 16, upcoming items, I'll let folks read that at their leisure. It's on the agenda. And then item 17, adjournment, so it's 7:40. And thank you all who were here in person, and for those watching at home, have a good night.
Nicely done.
Good night.